Thank you, Alan. Just great info. I think it's kind of shocking to realize that these EMFs and this type of artificial radiation has been studied back since the middle of the 20th century. And the denial and burying process by industry is also nothing new. And they learned a lot from big tobacco and asbestos, and they're using the same playbook. And with the 5G, they're just barreling on ahead. There's absolutely no precaution. They don't even really have a business case for it yet, as Alan alluded to. So, number one, like has been spoken about, at a community level, we've got to come together around this. And number two, we've got to control what we can control. And right now, that's really our homes. And so I'd like to bring it down from kind of the 30,000 foot into some more practical things and ways you can protect yourself and your family at home. And none of us today are trying to take you back to a Stone Age or Luddite existence, right? Technology does some wonderful things for us. We'd like to bend your ear to thinking about using it in a safer way, and there are ways to do that. First of all, building biology. Again, I'm a building biologist, and what is that? You probably had the question when I said it. It is a discipline that came over from Germany a few decades ago, and it really focuses on creating a healthy home. All aspects, from air quality, water quality, the building materials used, the layout of the house with regard to the earth and the orientation of the earth, many different things, and also the electromagnetic profile of the home. And we've really, with this modern technology and quote-unquote advances, we've really actually created a disconnection from how it used to be, the natural world, and our connection to that, and how healthy that was for us. In building biology, we work with both homeowners and we work with professionals. So doctors, nurses, naturopaths, acupuncturists, real estate professionals, architects, builders. We really try and get the message out to them and help sort of flesh out this idea of how important connection to the natural world and natural healthy things are. So the electromagnetic spectrum, it can be kind of overwhelming. You might remember some of this from your high school physics class. But I think the point to make here to sort of boil this down is that this is how energy goes from point A to point B in the universe. And there are many different forms in which it does that, and ways in which it does that. And there have been natural types of EMFs longer than we've been around. And that all life has developed under. And then at the bottom, you can see examples of the man-made, artificial ones that have really only been on the scene about 130 years, since the Chicago World's Fair in 1893, when the light bulb and the AC electric motor came on the scene. So this is, when you hear this, I just want you to think about, this is how energy gets around, and there's healthy ways that it can do that, and there's not so healthy ways. When I'm working and focusing in on EMFs in a home, there's really 4 buckets, we'll call them, 4 categories of EMF. You can see them there. Artificial lighting is a big one. Light is a huge driver, right? It's a tiny little sliver of this spectrum, but it's such an important biological messaging process. Radio frequency, which is a complicated way of saying wireless. I'll probably just call it RF for the rest of the presentation. So if I say that, it just means anything that sends or receives a wireless signal. And then the final 2 here have to do with power flow. We call these power system EMFs. Energy coming into our homes, going around in our homes, and going back out. And those are AC electric and AC magnetic. Let's just touch on each of those a little bit, and artificial lighting is a great place to start. Really, modern light bulbs are alien suns. They don't match the gold standard in any way, shape, or form of the sun. They emit isolated forms and spikes of certain frequencies of light. Blue light, you may have heard a bit about that recently. This is an extremely bioactive sliver of light telling your body to be awake and to do awake things. And so you can start to see the problem when you're getting this isolated type of light after the sun goes down. Your body doesn't know, it's disrupted, it can't prepare for sleep, it can't transition, can't maintain that circadian cycle. Other problems with modern lighting: flicker effect, stroboscopic effect. If you took a slow motion video with your phone of these lights and then played it back, you could see that they're pulsing sometimes up to 20,000 times per second. And they discovered this effect actually in the Vietnam War. Helicopter pilots were looking up through the rotors on sunny days and experiencing temporary paralysis, and that led to a lot of crashes. And so they looked into it and they realized what was going on. And our modern bulbs do the same effect. You ever walked into a Walmart or a big box store and instantly have a headache or been like, oh, I don't want to be here? It could very well be from the flicker of their fluorescent or LED lights. And also, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but energy efficiency is not all it's cracked up to be. There's a dark side to energy efficiency. And for these lights to use less energy, they have to, like I said, turn on and off frequently, thousands of times a second. And every time they're off, it's saving energy. And if you extrapolate that, it's an energy efficient light. But it's producing, when it does that, what's called transient spikes of frequencies or dirty electricity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right, radio frequency, RF. Wireless communications. You know a lot of these names, I'm sure: 5G, 4G, all these Wi-Fis. There's a new Wi-Fi called Wi-Fi 6. Bluetooth, location, GPS, proximity. There's so many forms that messages are sent. You can see on the right this very loud, busy chart. Those are the frequency allocations of this type of radiation for the US. The air around us is chock full of this kind of radiation. This is the telecoms, this is in other industry, military, medical. Everybody is using the air around us to transmit signals and messages. Internet of Things, like Alan spoke about, quote-unquote smart devices. Are they really that smart with these health effects? And the homes I go into, it's really common that there are 15 to 20 devices that I uncover and educate the clients about. And this type of radiation, again, it's that coherent, focused, doesn't match natural ambient radiations, and it oscillates thousands to billions of times in a second. Just incredible signaling into our bodies that doesn't match anything we're used to from an evolutionary perspective. So regarding power flow in and out of the home, there's AC electric, and I like to really visualize this with the picture on the right. You've probably seen one of these at Sharper Image or a science fair, but this is like electrical fingers of energy coming out into your environment. And these happen just from the presence of electricity. So your home is electrified, right? So in every room, around every conduit, everything that plugs in, we can think of, I call it a 5-foot bubble, but these fingers are extending and they're looking for a lower voltage point. North American power system gives 120 volt power to our homes, and we are much lower voltage than that. And so we are a pathway for this energy, these fingers to jump onto. Interestingly, this type of EMF can affect you and can be present if the appliance is plugged in and not switched on. So if your table lamp is plugged in but not switched on, just the presence of electricity is extending this field out into the room and onto your body. Common sources, power lines, electrical wiring, and really any type of device or appliance that plugs in. Thankfully, this field is generally easy to shield or reduce. And the other side of the coin is an AC magnetic field. This is produced when current is flowing along a wire. The more current is flowing, the bigger the field. So you can imagine with a high tension power line, like in this picture, as the field, the color-coded field here radiates off, the more current flowing on those lines, the farther and the stronger that field goes. This type of EMF cuts right through modern building materials, and it can be very difficult and expensive to shield. Related to these two, and I touched on it earlier, is dirty electricity. And in the building biology trade, we call this this yellow fuzz here on the screen, that's a tracing from my oscilloscope, we call that the fuzzy caterpillar. And that rides on this red sine wave here, which is the power delivered to us by the utility. And this fuzz is very disruptive to our bodies, and it rides out into the room on those fingers of electricity that I talked to you about. So it's adding this cacophonous symphony into our environments. Variable speed pumps, like on a hot tub or a pool or a mini split heating system, cooling system, produce this. Artificial lighting, dimmer switches, and a lot of modern electronics, like the block in the middle of the cable on your laptop charger. That's a transformer. It steps voltage down so your computer doesn't explode, and as it does that, it's creating this type of noise. Thankfully, again, this type of EMF is not generally too bad to shield or produce. I talked about this just briefly a few slides ago, but energy efficiency has a downside. It has a dark side, and so do smart devices. I've just highlighted a few devices on the left that are kind of a part of this energy efficiency and smart movement, and then the associated EMF downside on the right. And I think it's great to be concerned about energy efficiency, but the way the marketing dollars that are spent on it pushes us is to just really focus in on that, and we're missing this dark side. So it's great if you want to use some of these things in your home, that's great. There's just a downside that we're going to have to deal with from an EMF perspective. There are ways to work with it, but it's additional effort and cost. Okay, I'm thinking I might burst some bubbles on this one. So, there are a lot of products out there you may have seen and heard of: crystals, pendants, harmonizers, stickers, dots, so many. And they make some wild, audacious claims about their ability to instantly harmonize and protect you from this type of radiation. Well, I'm here today to say I have never seen one of these things change a readout on my industry standard, cutting edge, multiple $1,000 EMF meters. So, it's really important for you to spend your money first on things that actually work. Hiring a professional building biologist, getting your own meters, and DIY in your house, which is what we're going to get into next. And if you have money left over after that, and you want a shiny thing in the corner or on your phone, that's wonderful, do it. But just don't make it your first line of defense. So let's go through a couple of practical steps. And this one may surprise you, but as we showed on that slide, how charged the air is around us, we can't spend all of our lives in our safe homes. And so we need ways to offset the effect of the EMF that we're going to be exposed to. And the number one way to do that is to connect to the natural EMFs, the healthy EMFs. And this is a picture of my lovely partner Kat and my daughter Samantha on the beach in Mexico with the sunrise, and they are letting the sun hit their skin, hit their eyes. They're touching and connected to the earth with their bare feet. They're enjoying each other's company, they're playing, they're in the water. They're engaging with these natural EMFs. And you don't have to go to Mexico. I mean, the effect from the sun is stronger there, closer to the equator. But you just need to make sure you're spending time in nature and connecting to the earth and getting away from the population-dense centers where all of this EMF is. So please, do what you can to offset, to bolster and boost your systems with natural EMFs. Number two, this applies in so many places when we're thinking about reducing our exposures at home. It can be complicated. It's a concept from physics. I'm going to try and boil it down for you, but it's called the inverse square law. And it says the intensity of a radiation source falls with the square of the distance. And what that means is a short, small increase away from the source of an EMF leads to an exponential decrease in the strength of the field. You can see the S here, the source, and as it travels through space, it spreads out. And as a result, the radiation in any given area is less. So if you can create distance in your home from things that plug in and things that send wireless signals, you are really making a significant jump in reducing your exposure. So this applies everywhere. It's a very important concept. Number three, knowledge is power. So get your own meters. Meters, EMF meters, come in handy in so many ways, from remediation projects in your home to testing out a new device that you got, or checking into an Airbnb or a hotel, or traveling somewhere, or a place, your office. You know, I don't feel good with my desk in that corner. You know, what's going on over here? We can't. I just have a lot of horror stories of working with clients, and I go in and they said, hey, I spent all this money on this fancy thing that's supposed to do this to the EMFs. And I go over there, and for one reason or another, it's not doing what they thought it was. So being able to verify is incredibly important in this work. These are the meters that I really like. I've got some actually over there if you want to take a look later and talk about those, but highly recommended as you travel down this EMF awareness path. Number four, let's start with figuring out what's outside. What are the external threats? And there are many these days. I've pictured a few here. We're probably all familiar with utility smart meters that transmit wirelessly to the utility about our power usage. That's a problem. They're a privacy concern. These inject dirty electricity noise into our homes. And now we have the same thing for our water meters, for our gas meters. There's power lines, of course, all over the place. All kinds of different forms of cell phone antennas, from 5G related small cell antennas, kind of in the middle of this slide on telephone poles, to the larger macro towers in the bottom right. Artificial lighting, right? This stuff comes on at night and makes the world look like it's solar noon. And that can come into our home, and we need to protect from that too. And then this might shock you, but in the top right, that is something you may have seen on the telephone pole outside your home. That's a transformer. And again, it steps down the power coming into your home to a more acceptable, useful level. But you actually share that with up to two or three other houses. And so that's a pathway, that's a shared pathway. And whatever your neighbor has going on, even if you've done all the great remediation work in your home, this can still be a way that EMF comes in. So we have to take all this into account. And again, having those meters, you can know what's that cell tower that's a half mile away doing. If I'm inside my front door, I have this level. If I step outside, looking at the cell tower, where does it go? What's the level? And then if it's not a big drop off and you've taken care of wireless in your home, then you can make an educated decision to implement some shielding. So we need to know what's going on outside and how much of it is getting inside. Number five, if you do this, you're 85% of the way there in terms of protecting yourself. There's so much wireless now, so many devices in homes, like I mentioned. So I would highly recommend you go throughout your home and take an inventory. And some things will be pretty clear. If they're transmitting wirelessly, it's going to help to have a meter. You can go around and unplug things, and if your meter is still chirping, you can keep searching. But we want to have that inventory list, and then we want to take a good hard look at it. Do I need this thing? Can I replace it with something that doesn't transmit? can I put it onto a power strip with similar devices and just have that one button to press to keep it off when I don't need it? How can I manage all this wireless in my home? The minimum starting point here is to ensure that all of these things are off when you sleep. We have to protect our sleep first and foremost. The gold standard is moving to an old-fashioned, hardwired situation. It's called Ethernet. It's faster, it's safer, and it's more reliable than wireless. It's a little bit of a headache to get there. There is some work involved. I help people make this transition all the time, so it's very doable. It's very DIY. And the next thing I would tell you is avoid being an early adopter. I was that guy way back in 2007 in line for the iPhone. I was the early adopter guy before I knew about this. And that's a really dangerous thing to do now. There's so many devices coming out, and a lot of us, myself included, have fallen prey to this consumeristic desire to get the next latest and greatest cool thing. But generally speaking, these things are bad for us, and they have a lot of consequences and downsides. When you're using your cell phone, if you have to use it, keep it away from your body. Don't talk to it up to your head. Don't keep it in your pocket. Don't put it in your bra. That's really bad news. So if you're talking on it, put it on speakerphone, set it on the table. They'll be able to hear you. You'll be able to hear them. And that inverse square law is working for you right there, even just a foot or two. Big drop off in the radiation. You can also get air tube headsets, which keep that radiation away from you. I've got a few back there you can take a look at. That's a really great thing to do. You can keep the phone in airplane mode when you're not using it. You don't need to be, trust me, you don't need to be connected all the time. You can check in on your messages periodically. And let me just jump back real quick to the Ethernet. I just want to say, it seems a little strange, and my phone will work when it's hardlined. Yes, it will. 95% of your devices will work 95% as well as they ever did when they're connected to Ethernet and not emitting wireless radiation. So there are workarounds, again, to use our technology and get the benefits from it and reduce the downside. And while we're talking about airplane mode, did you know your phone has multiple antennas on it, and it can have some of these antennas on and still show you the airplane icon?
Yeah.
These are screenshots from an iPhone, and you can see in the little box in the top left the 4 icons. And the 3 photos on the left are all configurations where your phone would be emitting radiation. And in some of them, it's going to show you the airplane icon. You need to actually go in and ensure that these antennas in your settings are switched to off. And on the iPhone, that looks like this little white slash through the icon that you can see in the larger picture on the right. If you've never done this or checked this on your phone, I can show you after the presentation. The next area we should kind of think about is extended use areas. So your office, your living room, your kitchen, bedroom. And we want to assess these areas for what I'm going to call hotspots. Every room has them, and these can really inform us on problem devices or problem areas not to spend time in. Move your couch to the other corner. Create some space from that lamp. There's just a lot of ways that this energy pops up. And again, we're thinking about those electric fingers, and they're traveling around, and we need kind of a 5-foot bubble from these things. So sometimes that means reorienting your desk, or changing the layout, or moving that printer a little bit further away. So you need to assess the room. A couple of more specific points. Please don't use your laptop when it's plugged into power. Please use it on battery. We have to kind of rethink this so that when we sit down to work on our laptop, we unplug the power cord. And then when we get up to make lunch or get a coffee or whatever, we plug it back in so that when we return, it's ready to go with battery power. This is a huge one. These, especially Macs and Apple products, are just an inferno when they're plugged in. Consider grounding products. There are a number of ways we can give additional pathways to our office equipment, for example, for the energy to go away from us, to go back to our electrical system and out. I have a number over there. Some plug into your USB ports, some plug into your internet hardware. There's just a number of ways that we can give additional pathways for this energy to go away from us. And then artificial lighting. We need to really be cognizant of this, especially after the sun goes down, so we're not confusing our bodies. So we're maintaining that circadian rhythm. Light bulbs are a big one, and this is pretty easy. And you can still get incandescent bulbs, but that's the best of the worst, I would say, in terms of bad effects. So switch out all your bulbs to incandescent. If you tolerate the Amazon thing, you can find them there, and there are a lot of other retailers online that you can find that will sell any variety of incandescent. It's probably going to be hard to find if you walk into Home Depot or Ace these days. And then screens. This is the same problem lighting coming out of all of our screens, our TVs, our laptops, our phones. And thankfully, there's some really good software out there built into a lot of these things. There's also an aftermarket software called Iris that you can use that will pull this blue out of the light coming out of your screen, and also sometimes reduce the flicker. So definitely lighting should be a part of our EMF mitigation journey in our extended use areas. Sleep. Obviously, this is a key time for healing and regeneration, and so we need to create sleep sanctuaries. A great way to start thinking about this is to have a buffer zone within a couple hours of bedtime where you're not seeing artificial lighting, so you're using those mitigation softwares I mentioned like Iris, or you have blue blocking glasses, or you've switched to warmer incandescents, or you're using candles or very low warm lighting. And then also social media. We've really talked about some health concerns with EMFs, but there's all this behavioral stuff that comes with this too, right? And social media is really, it can be aggravating, it can really get your blood boiling sometimes, so you need a buffer zone from that too before bedtime. You need to help your body wind down, right? Electrical circuits in and around bedrooms bring this energy very close to us while we sleep. You can see this image here. This is something I produce for clients called the bed map. This is looking at the AC magnetic. You can see the color-coded severity scale on the right, and this was the bed of a 6-year-old child who was having a lot of behavioral issues at school. And when I analyzed the circuits going to the bedroom and around the bedroom producing this, we identified radiant floor electrical heat as producing this huge field. And moving forward from that point, the client turned that circuit off at night, and the child's behavior improved. So doing this really promotes a camping-like experience. And again, you're going to want to have meters to do this. Sometimes when we turn a circuit off and the lights go out in the bedroom, the field from the next room over isn't being canceled now, and it's coming in. So we want to have some meters to verify this. Final word about sleep. Grounding sheets are really problematic. Anything that ties into our home electrical system can bring stray and unwanted current and voltages closer to us. And more often than not, in my experience, grounding sheets do that when you plug them into the wall. So I would really avoid doing that. It's generally safe to run it out into the soil with a ground stake if you have to have the ground sheet. But I actually think that disabling circuits to the rooms at night is a more potent way to improve sleep quality. So those 1 through 7 I really consider low-hanging fruit that you all can get started with right away, and I encourage you to do so. There's a little bit of DIY here. And just a bit about what I do as a professional home inspection. It really gets, these are all symptoms, and what I do gets more to the root of the problem, of this EMF problem. As you can see, I get into the electrical panel. I'm clamping on utility gas lines coming into the home. I have very high-end equipment that can tell you exactly what frequency is the problem, and then we know more about the source. So I think it's great to tackle the low-hanging fruit I mentioned, but to really get to the root of the problem, I would recommend a professional building biologist come in. There's a number of ways we can work together: remote consulting, email, Zoom, phone, home inspections, full home inspections, quick checks, focuses on one area of the home or one type of EMF or the cell tower down the street, as well as pre-purchase. Before you sign that contract for a new home or a rental, we want to make sure that there are not looming EMF issues that in some cases can cost tens of thousands to remediate. We need to bring in electricians and plumbers and outside vendors, and there's a lot of cost with that generally to get this right. So we don't want that buyer's remorse. We want to check it out before you sign that contract. And obviously, this is kind of up and coming in awareness in the communities, and so a lot of my work is around education, and I've tried to produce some great resources for that. I've done a couple of ebooks. I do presentations like this, one-on-one trainings. I'm also very active on social media, putting out tips and tricks. And I also have a newsletter that you can sign up for in the back. And that is about it. Thank you all for joining us. I know this was a ton of information. So at this point, we'd like to open it up for a Q&A if you've got any questions percolating in your brains.
So let's give Shane a round of applause.